What would you do if a 1% risk completely destroyed your entire project baseline and left your reputation in tatters? Imagine looking at your risk register and seeing a threat with a tiny 1% chance of happening, so you naturally ignore it to focus on a vendor delay with an 80% likelihood. Then, that 1% risk triggers, the project dies, and you are left explaining to a steering committee why you had no backup plan for a disaster you saw coming. I am PM Panda, PMP certified since 2003 with 25 years in the trenches, and today I will show you why ignoring low probability, high impact risks is how professional legacies actually end. The pain of a failed project is magnified 10 times when you have to admit the math gave you a false sense of security. Sitting in front of a board of directors and explaining that you did nothing because the likelihood was low is a conversation no manager survives. We often focus on the financial impact or the red budget lines, but the real cost is the total loss of team confidence and your own career momentum. You need to understand how to correctly weigh severity against probability by using a probability and impact matrix to protect your project from these catastrophic blind spots before they strike. In professional certification exams and real-world delivery, we define a risk as an uncertain event that has a positive or negative effect on our objectives. Proper risk assessment requires evaluating every threat in terms of two distinct factors: the likelihood of it occurring and the severity of the impact it leaves behind. Focusing purely on the probability creates a dangerous trap where you feel safe just because a number is small. As a knowledgeable colleague, I am telling you that you must ask which factor is more important when the potential impact is literally project ending. To keep your assessment process robust and objective, you should utilize a tool called the Probability and Impact Matrix to map out your threats. This is a data representation grid that defines different levels of likelihood and consequence, typically ranging from very low to very high. Even if a risk has a very low probability, if the impact is rated as very high, it means your project end item becomes effectively useless if it triggers. These catastrophic outliers must be escalated and prioritized immediately, regardless of what the probability percentage claims on your spreadsheet. When you encounter these high-severity risks, you cannot simply choose to accept the risk and hope for the best. You must proactively use a strategy like risk avoidance, which involves changing your project plan to eliminate the threat entirely. If you cannot avoid it, you must develop a reactive contingency plan, which is a predetermined set of actions to manage the consequences only if the risk occurs. I once saw a site manager ignore a low-probability weather event that ended up destroying a multi-million-dollar foundation because they had no plan in place. Let us look at a real-world example involving the construction of a $500 million international hospital. The project manager is digging the main foundation and identifies a 1% risk of hitting a rare, uncharted underground water spring during excavation. The junior engineering team argues that the probability is so low they should just accept the risk and keep digging to stay on schedule. However, the senior lead knows that hitting that spring would cause the foundation to sink, rendering the entire hospital structure dangerous and useless. Instead of playing the odds, the project manager uses the probability and impact matrix and classifies the severity as very high. He overrides the low probability and enacts a risk avoidance strategy by spending a small amount of money up front for advanced seismic testing to map the ground. He also prepares a contingency plan to have high-capacity pumps on standby just in case the testing missed a pocket of water. By respecting the severity rather than the math, he protected the project baseline from a disaster that would have been a total loss. In my 25 years of project delivery, I have learned that severity always dictates your ultimate contingency funding. Not just the likelihood, I have watched teams celebrate being on schedule while their bank accounts bled out because they didn't account for the high cost of a rare failure. If you are preparing for a professional certification exam, remember that the matrix is your primary tool for visualization. It prevents you from being blinded by the high-frequency, low-impact noise that distracts you from the rare events that can actually sink the ship. Here's what most people get wrong. They treat the risk matrix as a purely mathematical exercise where they blindly multiply scores together. If you multiply a 1 for probability by a 5 for impact, you get a 5, which looks less scary than a frequent but minor issue. This is a mistake because a 5 for impact means the project is dead. and no amount of low probability makes that acceptable. High-severity risks often require both a proactive mitigation response and a reactive contingency plan to be truly managed. Another common trap is confusing a proactive risk response with a reactive contingency plan. A response happens now to change the future, while a contingency plan sits on a shelf waiting for a specific trigger. Many managers think having a backup is enough, but for catastrophic risks, you often need to change the project's direction entirely to ensure success. Professional delivery isn't about being lucky. It is about being prepared for the worst-case scenario, even when the odds are in your favor. To wrap this up, remember that risk assessment must evaluate both the likelihood of occurrence and the absolute severity of the impact. Use your probability and impact matrix to visualize catastrophic, low-probability threats so they don't stay hidden in your register. Never passively accept a risk that could render your project useless. Always develop avoidance or contingency plans for those high-impact events. Open your current risk register today, filter for any risk with a very high impact, and ensure it has a documented response plan. If this breakdown of risk management helped you, hit the like button so I know to keep making these deep dives. Subscribe to the channel if you want to receive these practitioner lessons every single week to level up your career. I'm PM Panda, and I'll see you in the next one where we keep your projects on track and your baseline protected.